The galaxy builds armor, humanity builds chronometers. Instructor Zarkon had been mid-sentence when the first alarm screamed. His mandibles clicked shut. The cavernous lecture hall of Station Zenith-Prime froze. 36 military scholars, the elite of 8 allied species, watching their xenobiology lecturer realize that something was very, very wrong. Dimensional shielding at critical decay, came the automated voice, not a warning, a statement of fact. Primary breach point, eastern shaft, containment duration, estimated 40 seconds. The lights lurched orange. Emergency lumens cast every surface in a shade of dying fire. Garrock, the Kragan heavy welder in the third row, was already moving, his obsidian bone plates catching the strobes as he stood. Around him, Limia, the Limian cadet, lost control of her chromatophores. Her skin flickered through a panicked rainbow, fear blue, shock white, back to fear blue. The bioluminescence made her impossible to miss. Evacuation Route 7, Zarkon commanded, his three-fingered hand pointing toward the maintenance hatch. Single file, no talking, move. The students obeyed. They had to. Obedience was the only thing keeping the terror at arm's length. Anya Rostova didn't move, not yet. She sat in the back row, where she always sat, her attention apparently glued to the far wall. In her right hand, a heavy tungsten calibration stylus, the kind xenobiology majors used for precise notation on hardened paper. She rotated it slowly between her fingers, then tapped it against her knuckles. Clack, clack, clack. The rhythm was metronomic, unbothered. Wrong. Everything about her was wrong. A human at Zenith Prime wasn't unusual. The integration programs had been running for 6 years, but they didn't usually sit alone. They didn't usually fail to panic. They didn't usually tap metal on bone like they were timing something. The other students filed past her toward the hatch. Zarkon glanced back once, assessing, then held the hatch's edge open. Cadet Rostova. Coming, she said, not urgent, not slow, just the tone someone used when they were already doing what needed doing. She pocketed the stylus, clack, and stood. The hallway beyond the hatch was already cold. Station atmospherics were venting somewhere above, bleeding heat into the void. Emergency lumens painted everything in that dying fire orange. 30 meters ahead, the primary evacuation corridor split, the main route toward the central hub, and a narrower maintenance shaft that descended deeper into the station's bones. Zarkon herded them toward the maintenance shaft without explanation. The main corridors would be packed. The shaft would be tight, but it was shorter. It was also darker. The strobes didn't reach down there. Stay in contact with the wall, Zarkon ordered. Count off. I need to know who's with me. They counted, 28 voices, 28 cadets in the dark. Zarkon stepped around the corner first. He stopped. His mandibles went still. The maintenance shaft opened into a secondary hub, a wide chamber for equipment storage. The wall ahead was supposed to be brushed aluminium plating. It wasn't. It was meat. Scored, shredded, painted in fluids that looked black in the orange light. Among it, shapes, forms that might have been armor, might have been bone, might have been something that had never had a name. The Kragan security detail, all 17 of them. Don't stop, Zarkon said quietly. Eyes forward, don't. The air changed, not cooled, changed, like something had reached through space itself and pinched it. 3 shapes materialized in the chamber's far corner. Tall, 9 feet, maybe more, limbs bent in angles that suggested more joints than evolution permitted. Their bodies shifted between states, solid for a fraction of a second, then translucent, then solid again. Their armor was crystalline, refractive, and it caught the orange lumens and threw them in colors that didn't have names. Eyes, they had eyes, lots of them, and everyone was fixed on the students. Null stalkers, Zarkon breathed. He reached back without looking, and his hand found the hatch's manual lock. Run, maintenance shaft gamma down, move now. The students ran. The null stalkers didn't chase. They didn't have to. Something about the way they stood, the way they waited, said they already knew where the prey was going. The dimensional breach had given them access to the station's inner architecture. They understood the geometry. They understood the choices available to the hunted. Anya Rostova ran with the others. Her pulse was steady, her breathing controlled. Her hand rested on the stylus in her pocket, thumb tracing its grooves. The tungsten was cool against her palm, familiar. Zarkon counted heads as they descended. 28, all here, all alive. For now. The maintenance shaft went down 3 levels, each one colder than the last. The strobes from above faded to almost nothing, leaving only the weak guidance of phosphorescent markers every 10 meters. Around them, the sound of the station dying, atmospheric vents screaming, pressure seals failing in cascading failures, the deep structural groans of a vessel bleeding its life support into the void. And underneath it, underneath all of it, a sound like nothing the students had ever heard, a sound like space itself being torn, then smoothed, then torn again, rhythmic, hungry. Emergency beacon, Zarkon said into his wrist comms. Static answered him. Then, after a long moment, a voice, distant, cautious. Zenith-Prime operations, go ahead. Breach confirmed, Zarkon reported. Eastern shaft, dimensional incursion, hostile contact, requesting immediate evacuation protocols for 28 military cadets and 1 instructor. Acknowledged, the voice said. All routes blocked. The breach is spreading. You're going to need to hold position until fleet can push a containment field. Estimated time, 12 minutes. 12 minutes in a dying station with things that could walk through walls. Zarkon closed his eyes. He had trained for a lot of contingencies. Nothing covered this one. Behind him, in the dark, Anya Rostova tapped her stylus against her knuckles again. Clack, clack, waiting for the problem to arrive, waiting to see what it looked like when something that couldn't be killed finally met something that didn't scare. The countdown had started the moment the comms went dead. 12 minutes, that was what Fleet said, what Fleet hoped. In the maintenance shaft, surrounded by the smell of recycled air gone stale and the metallic taste of fear sweat from cadets whose biology couldn't hide what they felt, time moved differently. Zarkon's hand was steady on his weapon, a standard-issue plasma cutter, the kind used for hull repairs. It would do nothing to a null stalker. He knew this. The security detail had been equipped with far better. The security detail was now red smears on a wall 17 meters behind them. The cadets huddled in a secondary access chamber, a space designed to hold pressure regulators and emergency oxygen reserves. It was cramped. It was dark. It was the only place between them and the main concourse that had a lockable hatch. Anya stood near the hatch's edge, one hand resting on the lock mechanism. Her fingers were long and pale, human fingers, fragile-looking against the station's heavy alloy. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't even pretending to panic. She was watching the lock the way a sniper watches a target. Wrong again. Limia huddled against the far wall, her chromatophores cycling through the full spectrum, a bioluminescent distress beacon advertising their location to anything sensitive enough to see. Garrock kept telling her to control it. Garrock kept not understanding that fear wasn't something the Limian could turn off like a light switch. How long? Garrock asked. His voice was pitched low, the way Kragan warriors learned to speak in the presence of larger predators. It didn't matter. There were no larger predators than what hunted them now. 9 minutes, Zarkon said. He was tracking the comms dead time on his wrist display. Maybe 8. The upper routes. Blocked, Zarkon cut him off. He didn't need to say it twice. Garrock had heard the operations officer say it. Everyone had heard. All routes blocked. The breach is spreading. That was the part that didn't make sense. A null-stalker incursion was unprecedented. Zenith-Prime had been built with dimensional shielding specifically to prevent this. The shielding was supposed to be absolute. Dimensional breaches were theoretical, thought experiments in xenoethology seminars, not operational emergencies. Anya turned her head slightly. They're not spreading through the station, she said. Her voice was conversational, someone discussing lunch options, not survival odds. They're spreading through the station's structure, different thing. Zarkon looked at her. Explain. Dimensional shielding works by creating a mathematical boundary, Anya continued. She wasn't looking at Zarkon, she was still watching the hatch. A space that shouldn't exist, a fold in geometry that keeps probability-shifted organisms locked out, but shielding has anchor points, nodes, hardware that maintains the fold. And Garrock pressed. And they found the nodes. Anya's fingers traced the lock mechanism without touching it. They're not phasing through the shield, they're phasing through the nodes themselves, collapsing the boundary from the inside. Each node that goes dark opens a new access point. The silence that followed wasn't the quiet of a pause. It was the silence of understanding arriving too late. Zarkon's mandibles clicked once, sharp and final. He was doing the math. Eastern shaft had been the first breach point. Secondary hub, where the security detail had been shredded, was 2 nodes down. The maintenance shaft they were in was protected by a tertiary node. And if that node failed? How do you know this? Zarkon asked. Xenobiology major, Anya said simply. Prerequisite course, theoretical dimensional topology. Also, I watched them do it. You watched, Garrock started. In the secondary hub, while you were all running. Anya's head tilted slightly, as if hearing something no one else could. They didn't notice me, I wasn't afraid, no fear signature to track. Limia made a sound, not quite a word, somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. Her chromatophores flickered white-blue-white, a visual stammer. The tertiary node is failing now, Anya said. Can you hear it? Zarkon listened. At first, nothing. Then, a sound underneath the station's dying groans. A high-pitched whine, the frequency just at the edge of perception, not a mechanical sound. A mathematical sound, like reality itself, was being scored by an invisible blade. The lock mechanism, in front of Anya, began to spark. We need to move, Zarkon said, not a question, not a request. Now. Anya didn't move. She was watching the sparks with the same metronomic attention she had given her stylus tapping. They'll follow us to the main concourse, she said. All the way, every route down leads to the same place, the central hub. One exit, one bottleneck. They know this. They've been herding us here since the breach. Then what do you suggest? Zarkon's voice had dropped to the flat register of someone calculating whether a cadet was worth the oxygen she was breathing. Anya reached into her pocket and pulled out the tungsten stylus. She held it up to the failing light. The metal caught the emergency lumens and threw back a dull shine. We don't run, she said. We make them regret they came here. Garrock laughed. It was a laugh of pure hysteria, the sound of a heavy wielder realizing that bone plating and kinetic force meant nothing against things that moved through dimensions. You're going to kill a null stalker with a pen. Anya looked at him. She didn't smile. She didn't say anything. She just looked. And in that look, something shifted. Garrock's laughter stopped. Zarkon's hand tightened on the plasma cutter. Even Limia's chromatophores stuttered to a halt. Because in that moment, they saw something they hadn't registered before. A human in an academy uniform holding a stylus. A student. A scholar. A soft thing from a world that had somehow, impossibly, survived long enough to learn the rules of the galaxy. And suddenly, the question wasn't whether she could kill a null stalker. The question was, why did she look like she expected to? The lock mechanism gave up its battle with mathematics. The hatch's status light flickered from green to red, from sealed to open, from protection to exposure. From outside came the sound again, the tearing of space, the wet, wrong noise of something pulling itself through a dimension that had never been meant to hold it. Get back, Anya said quietly, all the way back, don't watch what comes through. Zarkon moved. His species didn't hesitate once a tactical reassessment was complete. He herded the cadets toward the chamber's far wall, past the oxygen reserves, toward the utility shaft that led deeper into the station's mechanical guts. Anya didn't follow. She stood at the center of the chamber, stylus held loose in her right hand, her breathing steady and even. Her pulse wasn't racing. Her pupils weren't dilated. Every physical marker of fear was simply absent. The hatch burst inward, not opened, burst. The metal tore like fabric. And through the tear, stepped the first Null Stalker. The Null Stalker didn't charge. It materialized fully inside the chamber, its crystalline armor catching the emergency lumens and fracturing them into colors that had no names. Its limbs unfolded, too many joints, angles that suggested the thing had evolved in a space where geometry itself was negotiable. One eye fixed on Anya, then another, then all of them. It was testing, reading her, looking for the fear signature that should have been bleeding off her like heat from a thermal vent. Finding nothing. Anya didn't move, her breathing stayed even. Her hand held the stylus loose and ready, the way someone holds a familiar tool, a pen that writes, a scalpel that cuts, a key that opens things that were meant to stay closed. "You smell like nothing," the Null Stalker said. Its voice wasn't sound. Sound moved through air in linear waves. This was something else, a vibration that bypassed the ear and went straight to the spine, a frequency that made the cadets pressed against the far wall want to scream without understanding why. "That's because I'm not afraid," Anya replied. The Null Stalker's posture shifted. A ripple ran through its crystalline armor, a wave of light that suggested confusion. Fear signature was how it hunted. Fear was the beacon. Fear was the thing that made prey trackable across dimensions. A human without fear was a human it couldn't hunt. "You should be," the Null Stalker said. "Why?" Anya asked. "You're just phasing in and out of the same dimensional coordinates. It's a loop, predictable." She moved. Not toward the Null Stalker. Through it, a step that seemed to anticipate the exact microsecond when the creature would begin its phase shift. Her shoulder brushed its crystalline armor just as it was transitioning. The stylus came up, tungsten meeting the mathematical point where the creature's biology was anchored between dimensions. The Null Stalker shrieked. The sound wasn't a vibration anymore. It was a tear, reality splitting, closing, splitting again. The creature's form solidified violently, its body collapsing from ethereal to physical in a single, agonizing instant. It hit the chamber floor like a sack of crystalline garbage. Dead, gone, unmade. Anya stepped back, stylus held loose, already watching the hatch. Behind her, Garrock made a sound, not words, just a sound. Lymia's chromatophores had locked to a single color, shock white. Zarkan's mandibles were clicking rapidly, a Kragan nervous tick that meant his entire understanding of the universe had just been reorganized. "How many more?" Anya asked, not looking back. Zarkan's hand was shaking. "The secondary hub, we heard. There were at least 3, maybe 4. "Then they're coming." Anya moved toward the hatch, stepping over the dissolving corpse. "And they've already learned I'm a problem. The pack mind will have registered it. They'll come coordinated, faster, less separated." "The main concourse," Zarkan said, his voice steadying as shock transformed into tactical reassessment. "It's the only route that gives us space to maneuver. Also the only route that's got line of sight to the station's primary power column." Anya paused at the hatch. She turned to look at him. "Why would I care about the power column?" "Because if they think they're dying," Zarkan said slowly, understanding arriving as he spoke, "they'll try to bring down the whole station rather than let a human kill them. A human needs that power column functional to keep the dimensional barriers stable. You'd be fighting them and managing system collapse." "I see." Anya turned back to the hatch. "Then I'd better make sure they don't get that far." She stepped through. The main concourse was vast, a cathedral of commerce and culture, all soaring pylons and transparent observation decks. In peacetime, traders and scholars moved through it in an endless river. Now it was a tomb. The walls were lined with the abandoned stalls of merchants whose species had never learned to evacuate fast enough. Bodies, cadets, station personnel, some recent, some hours old. And moving through it, 20, maybe 25 Null Stalkers. Hive patterns, pack choreography. They weren't hunting now, they were feeding. Anya stood at the concourse entrance. She didn't raise her weapon. She didn't shout. She just let herself be seen. The Null Stalkers felt the presence of a non-fear signature moving through their pack mind like a stone hitting still water. Every head turned, every eye fixed. "There," she said quietly, not to the creatures, but to Zarkon and the cadets pressing behind her in the entrance corridor. That's the problem. Zarkon's hand gripped his plasma cutter. We could try the secondary. No, Anya was already moving, stepping down into the concourse. They'd follow us through the secondary. They'd follow us through the primary. They'd follow us into the station's core if they thought it meant cornering us. But here, she stopped in the center of the vast chamber, surrounded by the living carnage of a pack that had never learned what prey fought back. Here they made a mistake. They separated, lots of them, no dimensional anchor, no coordinated breach point. She raised her voice, letting it echo off the vaulted ceiling, which means I can kill them one at a time. The nearest null stalker lunged. 3 others followed, their forms shifting between states, trying to bracket her, to create an inescapable geometry of attacks. Anya moved like water, like mathematics, like something that had been trained not to die on a world where everything had teeth. She struck the first null stalker mid-phase shift. Tungsten met crystalline armor at the exact coordinate where physics demanded the creature must be solid. It fell. The second came from the left. She sidestepped and drove the stylus into its neck junction, the weak point where multiple limbs converged. It collapsed. The third tried to bypass her entirely, phasing through the space where she had been instead of where she was. She was already moving toward it, already striking, already making it real and killing it, before it understood that fierce signature was useless against someone who didn't have one. Zarkon watched from the entrance. His mandibles had stopped clicking. His weapon hung loose at his side, because in that moment he understood something that would reshape how the galaxy thought about humans forever. This wasn't combat, this was slaughter, precision, mathematical, inevitable. And she was doing it alone. 20 null stalkers, Anya Rostova, a tungsten stylus. The pack mind had registered its problem, but it was too late to scatter, too late to retreat. They were committed. They were hunting something that had been designed by a death world to not be hunted. The concourse began to fill with the sound of crystalline armor shattering, the sound of things that couldn't die learning how they could. 15 null stalkers remained. Anya had stopped counting after 7. The rhythm was enough, the spacing between phase shifts, the angles where they were forced to rematerialize, the mathematical predictability of desperation. She moved through the pack like a metronome moved through time. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just the steady clack-clack of tungsten meeting crystalline armor, each strike placed at the exact coordinate where physics demanded the creature had to be. Zarkon watched from the concourse entrance. He wasn't moving anymore. He wasn't shouting orders or trying to organize an evacuation. He was just watching, because what he was witnessing didn't fit into any tactical framework he had learned. A human, was dismantling an apex predator species with a writing implement and pattern recognition. The station's ambient sounds had changed. No more alarms, no more comms chatter, just the sound of crystalline things dying. 13 null stalkers. 10. And then the air itself seemed to pause. The remaining 5 null stalkers stopped their attacks. They didn't retreat, didn't regroup. They simply froze, their forms locked between states as if something had forced them to choose solidity. And through the crowd of dying, dissolving corpses, something moved. It was larger, older. Its crystalline armor had a depth to it that suggested it had evolved across dimensions the other null stalkers hadn't even discovered. The Alpha, the thing that had led the breach, the thing that had never, across all its existence, encountered prey that couldn't be hunted. Anya stood in the center of the concourse, stylus held loose, breathing steady, waiting. The Alpha null stalker spoke. Its voice was different from the others, not a vibration but a pressure, a weight that pushed against reality itself. "What are you?" it asked. "The thing you didn't account for," Anya replied. The Alpha's eyes, all of them, every single one, fixed on her, and in that gaze something shifted, not understanding, realization. For the first time in its existence, the Alpha felt something it had no designation for, something beyond fear, something like dread. Because it understood, finally, What Anya had known from the moment the Null Stalkers materialized in the chamber. They had made a mistake, a fatal one. They had invaded a station full of humans. A soft female cadet stood at the far side of the concourse, watching the calculations behind Anya's eyes as she prepared for the final strike. Beside her, a Kragan heavy wielder who realized his bone plating and kinetic force meant nothing. And above them all, hidden in the gallery observation decks, were 43 other humans from the academic exchange program. 43 humans who had been studying the Null Stalkers. 43 humans who understood dimensional topology the way other species understood breathing. 43 humans who were waiting. But the Alpha didn't know about them yet. The Alpha was still processing the moment in front of it, the moment where everything it understood about survival was being undone by something soft and fragile and utterly, completely unafraid. Anya adjusted her grip on the stylus, just slightly, just enough to shift its balance point. 5 seconds, she said quietly. The Alpha lunged. It came with all of its dimensional weight, all of its evolutionary advantage, all of the dread it had spent its existence avoiding. It phased and rephased, trying to bracket Anya from a dozen angles at once, trying to make prey of something that had never been meant to be prey. Anya didn't dodge. She stepped forward, directly into the Alpha's calculated attack pattern. And as the creature began its final phase shift, the moment when it transitioned from shadow to solid, she drove the tungsten stylus directly into the mathematical nexus where its consciousness was anchored between dimensions. The Alpha's scream tore the concourse apart. Not in volume, in structure, reality itself seemed to split and reseal as the creature's form collapsed from ethereal to physical to nothing, all within the space of a single heartbeat. The crystalline armor dissolved like salt in water. The body folded in on itself, and then there was nothing left but the stylus, still held in Anya's steady hand, still cool against her palm. She stood alone in the concourse. 25 Null Stalkers dead, one species apex predator completely, utterly extinct in the time it took for the emergency alarms to cycle once. Zarkan's comms crackled to life. Status, the voice on the other end was shaking. Fleet command. Someone watching the telemetry from a safe distance, someone who had expected Station Zenith-Prime to fall. Zarkan didn't move. He didn't lower his weapon. He just kept his mandibles still and spoke clearly into the channel. The threat is neutralized, he said. The Null Stalkers are eliminated. A pause, static, then repeat. Did you say eliminated? Confirmed. All 25 hostile contacts terminated. Primary threat removed. Another pause, longer this time, because somewhere on the other end of that comms line, someone was doing the math. Someone was asking themselves, how did 28 cadets and one instructor survive an apex predator incursion? How did the most unkillable species in the known galaxy die? What was the casualty count? Fleet Command asked finally. Zarkan looked around the concourse, at the bodies of the Kragan security detail, at the scattered station personnel, at the price the universe had paid for letting the Null Stalkers through. Significant, he said, but recoverable. He paused, then slowly he turned to look at Anya Rostova. At the human cadet standing in the center of the slaughter, stylus still in hand, her chrono reading showing the entire encounter had lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The xenobiology major, he continued into the comms, would like to file a report on dimensional topology. She has some observations about apex predator re-entry coordinates. Anya didn't look at him. She was already walking toward the primary power column, the massive installation that anchored the station's dimensional shielding. She was already assessing the damage, already calculating the repair sequence, already thinking 3 steps ahead to the moment when the Null Stalker incursion would be filed away as another tactical problem solved. Behind her, Garrock was helping Limia to her feet. Around them, the surviving cadets were beginning to emerge from the gallery decks and the maintenance shafts, counting heads, assessing losses, coming to understand that something fundamental had changed about what they were. The galaxy had sent humans to an academy to learn. The galaxy had gotten a demonstration instead. Anya reached the power column and began the diagnostic sequence. Her fingers moved with the same metronomic precision she had used on the Null Stalkers. Input commands, data scrolls, repair protocols activated, the steady clack-clack of her stylus against the control panel as she marked each completed section. Behind the power column's reinforced glass, the dimensional shielding flickered back to stable. The breach closed. The station stopped dying. On the observation decks above, 43 humans watched and waited. And Zarkon, standing in the center of a concourse painted with the crystalline remains of things the galaxy had thought were unkillable, finally understood what the integration programs had really been about. Not peace, not understanding, just a very, very quiet recruitment drive.